This September of 1990, my husband, Senator Frank Roberts, was in the hospital following an accident in his motorized wheelchair and a hip replacement surgery that followed. I am Oregon Secretary of State at this point, and the Democratic nominee for governor is, and I'm the Democratic nominee for governor. My Republican opponent was the very popular Attorney General Dave Frohnmeyer. There were two other candidates in the fall race, a libertarian and an independent. Part of the reason I'm sharing this, it's partly a political story, but it also demonstrates that one's personal and public life can come into challenging conflict. So let me take you back to 1990. A few days before I headed to Eugene for the first fall debate, Frank was transferred to a different hospital to receive some new medical therapy for his hip. Recovery was not going well, and he was experiencing far more pain than was normal this long after surgery. I was growing more and more concerned. The afternoon before the debate, I headed to the hospital to again check on Frank. I was planning to drive the 2 hours to Eugene late that afternoon and stay overnight. When I reached the hospital, Frank was looking tired and haggard. He could not get comfortable in his hospital bed and hadn't eaten his breakfast or his lunch. I was used to dealing with his pain, but that afternoon his eyes reflected a more severe pain. I knew the look. I consulted with the nursing staff and insisted that the doctor examine Frank that very evening. I said I would call back the first thing the next morning. At 7:30 a.m., I called the hospital to get the doctor's report and to speak to Frank. Frank was no longer in the hospital. He had left by ambulance very early that morning to transfer back to his regular hospital in preparation for a second surgery on his hip. They would be operating at 11:30 just before the scheduled debate. The ball joint on the hip replacement had slipped out of place and created a puncture wound that had finally pierced Frank's tissue and skin from the inside out. The reason for his pain was clearly visible by the time his surgeon examined him. Frank had refused to let them contact me in Eugene about his pending surgery. I felt overcome with guilt. I called the second hospital and reached the surgical ward. Frank was already under heavy sedation. I would just have to go ahead with the debate, call the hospital as soon as I finished, and then drive directly back to be with him when he got out of recovery. This is definitely not the frame of mind one needs to face a tough campaign debate. I wanted to cry like a baby. I did. I wanted to be at Frank's side. But I pulled myself together, focused on my debate materials, and waited to go downstairs to the hotel dining room for the first big debate in my race for governor. This would have been a tough moment under the best of circumstances. This, however, was not the best of times. At the debate, for a highly pressured hour, we exchanged jabs and answers on land use, abortion, the death penalty, taxes, timber, and even the debate schedule. Finally, the last question was posed by radio reporter Bob Valdez, a question that the Eugene Register-Guard described as the most telling question and answer of the entire debate. Here is the question. If you were not running for this office, who among the other candidates on the stage here today would you vote for? And none is not an answer. Well, the four of us had been rotating our order on all previous questions, and on this amazing question, I would be the final responder. Both Mobley and Arthur, the two independent candidates, ignored the reporter's instructions and said they would cast their vote for themselves. When Dave, the Attorney General, when his turn came, I, of course, expected better of him. Unfortunately, I was disappointed. Dave indicated that he was the only candidate on the stage prepared to be Oregon's governor, and he would have to vote for himself. Now it was my turn. I felt obligated to follow the instructions the radio announcer had laid out, and I said, "Unlike the three men on this stage, I will answer the question we were all asked. If I were not in this race, I would vote for the only other person on this platform qualified to be the governor of Oregon. I would cast my vote for Dave Frohnmeyer." The crowd applauded loudly and approvingly. The Oregonians said that the three male candidates had ducked the question. The Eugene Register-Guard said I had delivered the perfect answer, exactly what Frohnmeyer should have said about Roberts. The Eugene paper declared me the winner of the first debate. Their headline, "Round 1 for Roberts." As worried as I had been about Frank's surgery, I never imagined I would be able to do well in that debate. However, I just steeled myself, faced what I could not change, and did my job. That evening, I watched the rerun of the Eugene debate with Frank in his Portland hospital room. My speech professor husband gave me a very good grade. Dave Frohnmeyer and I laughed over that incident a number of times over the next 20 years. I thought of it and smiled when I attended Dave's memorial. Now, let me get